You're too expensive. You don't have enough experience. I'm going to give you 20 years of experience, so when you walk out the door and you have your first client, you're 20 years smarter than you would have been. I've titled this The Art of the Argument because that's how it sounds like in our head, and I want to help you guys win the argument. And the argument could be about money, it could be about direction, it could be all these things. The number one question I always give is, how do you convince the clients to go in a particular creative direction? Sound kind of familiar? Or why do clients have such bad taste? How do I convince? And so the word convince means, or seems to me to imply that you're moving them from their point to your point, and it's a lot of friction. I want to teach you a different way of doing this, okay? So I'm going to talk about a couple of things: determining value, understanding the client dynamic, and overcoming objections in the sales cycle. In any sales cycle, there are going to be objections that the client's going to have, meaning they're going to say something negative about you. What I want you to do is think about what are the top objections that you've heard. Most common objections are, you're too expensive, you don't have enough experience, and you don't know enough about blah. You're too expensive. Probably the number one. How do I know this? Because I've heard it myself many, many times. We're often too expensive. You don't have enough experience. You called it skill. Somebody else reframed it as experience. You don't know enough about blah, whatever it is, fill it in. E-commerce websites for dogs. So the question is, how do you respond to this? So what I want to do now is I want you to share some of your best responses to the three objections. You're too expensive. You're poor. Okay, I love that. I don't have a lot of experience. We'd like to repackage that and call it fresh ideas. That's called marketing or spin. I like that. Let's go on number three. Number three, you don't have enough expertise, domain expertise in whatever. What we're asking in these situations is to have the client take a giant leap of faith. Most people, as I realize, think it's a one-to-one game. And what you didn't realize is there's 3 more people or 2 more people, 5 more people in this equation trying to get the same job. So even if you come up with the right answer, you're not alone. I don't mean that in a positive way. So now you have to win the argument against a company, an entity, much bigger than you. And there's, right now, not a lot of companies smaller than you. But I've been doing business for 20 years. We're always the middle player, the medium guys. And so there are guys like you, guys and gals like you, a 1-person operation, 2-person working out of your loft. And they're always going to win the argument of, I'm cheaper. So we're in the middle, and the middle is a hard place to win. If you're the biggest, baddest company on earth, you have that to your advantage. You're the most stable, consistent, like your Landor and Associates when it comes to identity design. You guys know Landor and Associates? If you go up and do identity design against them, you'd lose, right? You think, but we've beaten them before, all right? So there's a way. So now the argument becomes much more difficult. We have to advance the game. So the hammer represents the company much larger than you. They've got way more experience. They've got 300 employees. They've got global offices. They have teams of researchers. They'll out-research you, outright you. They have MBAs, PhDs, and other acronyms you don't know about. The smaller player is much more nimble, can do things at incredible prices. And I want to tell you something. We have, for the past 20 years, made commercials, music videos, and it's a little scary now because the world's getting a lot smaller. So talent is very available, like on Behance. I can find people in Argentina and Germany, Brazilian, and they do incredible work. The cost of living is much lower, and there are no opportunities in a lot of these countries, especially Eastern Europe. The big company, the rock, the hammer, wins all those arguments except for one. Which one do they lose in? Price. Maybe they win all of them. Okay, so here's probably how it would sound. You're too expensive. Right, we are. We're worth every penny. You want the risky choice? Hire option B and C. You don't have enough experience. Yes, we do. We have 500 people. Tell me who's bigger than us. We've worked with 1,000 clients, Fortune 500. We've done gazillion billion dollars in billings. What do you mean we don't have enough experience? They can be Eddie. And you don't know enough about blah. Well, I have 35 researchers on staff. We have the USC lab ready to go for us. What are you talking about? And that's hard to beat. Now, you've not been in business for very long. Some of you not at all. So you don't know what the responses are. I do. Because we go up against the monsters all the time. And anytime you reduce scope, you actually give in to the price, you cannot go as low as a low-cost bidder. You just can't. Just remember that the whole client objection sales cycle, and we're talking about sales, not project management, think of it as a game of rock, paper, scissors. You can beat one, but you can't beat all. So what are you going to do about it? So if you say you're worth it, The bigger company will claim they're better known and more established, so you'll lose that argument. If you say we'll reduce the price, the smaller company always wins because sometimes to reduce the price, you have to change the scope, meaning, well, we'll give you 2 versions and not 5. So you're kind of caught in this horrible place. It's this kind of delicate balancing act. Like you're balancing on a chair, on top of a table, on top of another table, on top of a ledge where one wrong move, the wind changes, you die. So when clients raise an objection, it's like red meat to a dog. And what you want to do is, the problem is inside your head, what they're doing is they're trying to invalidate you and you feel invalidated. So it's kind of a stab at your own ego. We're eager to prove them wrong. So what we do is we dive in. Okay, so it's like this. You're the bull and you're not the bullfighter. So when you charge ahead like this, you play a game and the rules were designed to work against you because you're not the big bad dog. The big bad dog, most of the times, will win because they're willing to pay more because it's less risky. What you don't realize is somebody that hires you on the other side, they're usually not the owner. They make the wrong decision. What happens to them? They get fired. That's the reality of it. So when you guys talk about joking about design and I want this font and F you and this and that, somebody is going to have to find a new job. I know you don't think about that because you're not there yet, because you're still artists. That's what you want to do, okay? If you want to equip yourself with the right community, training, and resources to take your business to the next level, I want to personally invite you to check out the Futur Pro Group and our membership, specifically created for experienced business owners ready to scale. Okay, you know what happens? There's like 2 trains riding on a track. And since you don't have the upper hand financially, it'll look like that. Except for that'll just be you and they'll walk away from this. And the reason why is that people strive for consistency in their commitments. Sometimes you guys misspeak in your class or with friends. And rather than say, I goofed, you just keep like digging into that stupid position, even though you know you're wrong. If you have a girlfriend or boyfriend, you know you do this all the time. Even when you're wrong, you're like, no, that's the way the world works. And you find some cockamamie reason to explain it. So just remember that people strive to be consistent. And it's one of the principles of persuasion. So what you have to do, because it sucks to be on that balancing act, is you have to just remember, go against your instinct and don't charge in. And I'm going to share a concept with you that I think will help you out a lot. Now, this is judo. It's a game of leverage. Not that I'm some expert on martial arts, not at all, but I do enjoy watching it. Is that karate is like a hard martial arts, meaning it's about power and just breaking things. When you ever watch the taekwondo, the karate, those martial arts, it's about breaking boards, bricks, heads, anything. It's about power. And that's the approach you generally take. Jiu-jitsu, on the other hand, is a totally different thing. In judo, is you use leverage. You use the other person's momentum against them. They charge in, and what do? What we have to do is we embrace them, and you pivot, and you throw them to the side. So you exert very little power, and it can be done by anybody. Does that make sense, you guys? So you're using a strength disadvantage, and you're turning it into a positive. You're just waiting. It's like a countering thing. You wait, and you pivot. You don't need to prove you're right if you can just find the hole in the other person's logic. Okay, so when somebody says to you, you're too expensive, you don't have enough experience, you don't know whatever, you don't know enough about digital broccoli websites, the thing that I found to work best for me is I just own it. You're right. We are too expensive. We don't have enough experience. The trick is, how do you pivot out of that? I need to change the conversation, but without acknowledging what the clients have said first, their objection, you're just changing the subject and you're slippery. You're distrustful. You have to acknowledge it first, because otherwise they're saying, and they're smart people, the reason why they hire you is because they're smarter than you in business. You're not going to outsmart them. If they're the same objections, 1, 2, and 3, now we're going to embrace it by acknowledging it, by making them dig into their position, validating them, and now we have to spin them to the side and throw them. That's the hard part. Here's a book that I said you really do need to read. It's the Win Without Pitching Manifesto. Blair writes the book. He writes it like the 10 Commandments, except for their 12 Commandments. And he says, thou shalt not, like that emphatically. He writes like that. So when he says that when an opportunity first comes, you must do your best to kill the opportunity. As artists, as creative types, our tendency is to avoid areas of potential objection. What you want to do is do the opposite. You want to raise the objection first and lay them on the table for the client to address. So when they say, and you need to know this, the more experience you have, and I'm going to give you 20 years of experience, so when you walk out the door and you have your first client, you're 20 years smarter than you would have been. All right? So when you go out, I want you to know already you're too expensive, you don't have enough experience, and you don't know enough about blah. So here's how Blair couches the argument, because it's going to come up. Then the problem is, if the client says at first, you're too expensive, you're going to have to explain yourself. You're going to have to be defensive. It's not a power position. The power position is to say, in this $1 million company that hypothetically you're charging $80 an hour for, you could say to them, I'm not sure a company of your size can afford us. You brought it up first. Because they're already thinking that. They're thinking you're too expensive. Anyways, I'm not sure. So now they have to tell you why they think they can afford you. So they're proving themselves to you. Changes the entire client dynamic. So it's a concept called retreat and follow. What you do is you try to kill the opportunity and you back up. And if they're interested, they'll follow. And there's another philosophy or an idea behind this that says, if I whisper, to lean in to hear me. If you shout, you push people away. Selling, convincing, all that kind of stuff, that's shouting. You will push people away. So embracing, you paint a very clear picture of what it would be like to work with someone else, and you reaffirm the client's beliefs. And then the pivot, that's the hardest part. So now that they feel like they've been heard, they've been validated, pivot and make sure that the other option is now viewed as less desirable. And then you have to point out why you're different or better. This is the thing that I say, I'm different. I help businesses grow and be more innovative by helping them understand their customers. I help them talk to their customers in a genuine and a relatable way. So if you don't need help in this way, save your money, hire the other guys. We'll just let you know. We'll be here in 6 months when you need help because things didn't work out. I know it's cocky. I'm confident. I believe in what we do. And when I do what we do, clients are thrilled.